Bet you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear overnight, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you own me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
All right, good morning, folks. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and I am your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. All right, so the COVID-19 pandemic, before we get into all this, I got a lot of numbers I want to share today. That is the show, right? But before we get into this, the COVID-19 pandemic has always been this like debate between people who are, I would say, overly cautious and believe in authority, want to believe in them, are okay with having decisions made by people that they think know better than them, and others who put liberty and the unwillingness to live in a perpetual irrational state of fear before that fear. And we have this development this week, which is a perfect example of the Department of Pandemic and Perpetual Fear. All right, coming up with this. All right, it's been how long now? Let's see. Going back to, let's just say early 2020. It's a novel virus. A novel virus meaning we don't know anything about it. It's a new strand of a SARS virus, right? That's what we know or think we know. And there are those that are saying, okay, well, let's take this one step at a time here. Yes, there are people dying. We don't know much about it, but let's take this. And by the way, that early data included from where? China. And we have these so-called experts and these so-called, authorities who want us to believe everything China tells us is true. All right, that was problem number one, right off the gate. All right, and there were those of us who said it is better to wait for sound data to make decisions that could do irreparable harm to society. It is better to wait for sound data than it is to make bad decisions based on bad data that could hurt people in the long run and will end up being flawed. That has been the case with this pandemic from the jump. Exhibit A, outdoor transmissions. Why are we having a lockdown when all indications show that outdoor transmissions are nil? You are at the least risk from being infected when you are outdoors. And indoor transmission, particularly prolonged contact with somebody in an indoor environment, your house, put you at the highest risk of being infected. Why are we forcing nursing homes to take infected patients based on an irrational fear that we're going to run out of beds when indoor transmissions are the problem, that older people are the vulnerable population, and we still have beds? Here we comes Donald Trump. He gives Andrew Cuomo, the epicenter in New York, the epicenter of this early pandemic, right? He gives Andrew Cuomo all of the military resources. They transform a ship into a hospital. He's got the Javis Center. Samaritan's Purses down there with tents and tents on Central Park. Remember that? Empty. And Andrew Cuomo is sending old people to their deaths. Governor Wolf sending old people to their deaths. Governor Murphy sending old people to their deaths. Meanwhile, in between, we have the great, powerful Oz, Dr. Fauci himself. Don't ever question anything he says. Masks don't work. Don't worry about wearing masks. And by the way, outdoors, they definitely don't work and they're unnecessary. Remember that? They definitely don't work and they're unnecessary outdoors. Don't worry about it. 2 months later, 3 months later, you better mask up. I was lying to you. We didn't have the PPE at the time. So the Surgeon General and I were lying to you and the president. But we did it for your we did it in your best interest, and now you should absolutely believe everything we're saying. Because now I'm telling you, I'm telling the truth.
Tell you, they're the best magicians.
It's incredible. And one mask isn't good enough. 2 masks. Must be got a double mask up. Don't worry about me at baseball games not wearing masks, though, because I am the great and powerful Oz.
Or when the camera goes off. Remember that one? Thank God.
Or when the camera goes off and he tears his mask down. Here is the simple truth, all right? And where I'm alluding to here is we had the CDC this week. And, of course, Fauci, I expect there will be changes to the guidelines today, this week. And, of course, he knew that, just like he knows about the adverse impact monitoring from Moderna. He knows he's full of crap on that. He knew he was full of crap by telling the nation that Donald Trump was making promises he couldn't keep with the vaccine. He knew he was full of crap back then, folks. He knew he was full of crap when he got into it with Rand Paul about variants and the ability of the vaccine and those who have already been infected with the variants we know of to fight off variants that come up and have come up. Why? Because the National Institute of Health provided one of the groups for the largest studies we've had so far. So, of course, Anthony Fauci knew he was lying to you. He knew he was lying to a U.S. senator under oath. He knows he's lying every time he goes on Joy Reid. Every time he goes, and what the hell is he doing on a show like Joy Reid anyway? Overtly partisan show. And we're supposed to take this guy seriously.
Well, he's feeding his ego.
There is no statistical correlation between mask mandates and the reduction in infections or slowing the spread, which turned into stopping the spread altogether. Now the goalposts have really shifted. It's not about not having enough beds at the Javis Center. It's not about having not enough beds or, the hospitalizations overwhelming the healthcare system. Now it's about just getting infected. Healthy people really have to put themselves at risk because God forbid they can get somebody infected. And it's so nice to have these asymptomatic spread arguments that don't really have any sound footing. It's so nice to just have all of this to fall back on every time you get pinned in a corner by actual data. That's the beauty of these arguments and the ever-shifting goalpost. There is no statistical correlation between mask mandates and slowing and/or stopping the spread of coronavirus. There isn't a state or a nation that you could point to And for a statistician a couple of weeks ago to try to use Japan, that's their favorite go-to, to try to use Japan as an example is beyond baffling. You have to accept that the testing regime was perfect to even try to make this argument. And I'm not just talking about testing regime in Japan, everywhere. You have to presuppose, or you have to assume the testing regime early especially was perfect because you have to have faith in those early numbers. And the truth is it was not perfect. The truth is we had thousands upon thousands of false positives, which later confused people into thinking it was a reinfection. But even looking at Japan, that's their favorite go-to. Any statistician who's worth his weight in salt at all, worth anything, a damn, would know that the way Japan tested throws off those numbers. They were not widely testing their population. They waited a long time. When they started to ramp up, they then stopped again. Newsflash, folks, you test more, you get more positives.
Shocker.
That doesn't mean a mask is working, which, by the way, they wore before the pandemic. Only American statisticians with no knowledge of Asian culture would even think that's a sound argument to make in the first place.
That's just simple math.
But let's go ahead. It is simple math. You have to know. You can't form a correlation until you are confident in the baseline. That's it. You cannot, right? And without that, it means nothing. So let's go ahead and read from the article real quick before I even get started on this. Okay. Wall Street Journal. And then we'll read from the CDC. People who are fully vaccinated against the COVID-19 virus don't need to wear face masks when walking, hiking, biking, running alone, or gathering in small groups outside. Folks, running alone or gathering in small groups outside. Why can't, what the hell? That's an arbitrary ass statement. Running alone, but you can gather in small groups. Why can't I run in small groups? Why can't I run with one person? Can that person be 6 feet away? What about 3 people? What constitutes a small group? Federal health officials said, taking a major step to ease pandemic guidance while encouraging more people to get shots. I disagree. This isn't a major step at all. Anything leading up to this was either an admission, at least a lack of confidence in the vaccinations. At least, if not a tacit admission that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. This the narrative, the message being sent before all of this was that being vaccinated does not return you to normal life. And in truth, the easing of these guidelines, not a major step. This is an easing of the guidelines to the Karen community, to the mask-wearing Marys out there, to the drones in the District of Columbia and California and New York State who simply cannot look up simple math on their own. This is not for the liberty-loving person who refuses to live in a perpetual irrational state of fear based on what could be. What changed after the coronavirus that caused us to live in this irrational state of fear? Were there no bugs out there? There's always an irrational state of fear. You think coronavirus scares you? Maybe we should just live in a perpetual state of fear forever over what the U.S. government has in labs all around this country. God forbid they could get out one day. Russia, China, God forbid they could get out one day. So let's never return to normal. Because there's what ifs everywhere, every day, every second, every minute of every single day in your life. But that's not, especially this country, that's not what this is supposed to be about. Crisis is the rallying cry of the tyrant, James Madison.
Preach it.
For a reason. Fear is the most powerful weapon to get you to do things that might otherwise not be in your best interest. Nothing is worth a perpetual irrational state of fear. Now, before we even get to that, let me say this again flatly. There was never any correlation, statistical correlation, not in a state, not in a nation. We're going to look at Miami, one area where the mayor, did buckle to pressure. We'll look at Israel. We'll look at Sweden. We'll look at California. We'll look at New York. All right, initial mask mandate, April 12th. Cases, 50 a day. April 12th, 2020. By September, daily cases, 700. Fines increased on June 29th. Cases kept rising. Widespread lockdown restrictions applied even more. July 6th, cases kept rising. Curfews announced in 40 communities September 8th, and it continued to rise at the fastest pace in any predating time period. Look at Sweden, on the other hand. Flat, basically flat. During that same period, cases in Sweden right around the same as Israel, 50. By the end of this period, September, late September, it actually dropped below the 20s. Moving on. Miami-Dade. Mask mandate initially, early April, April 8th. Inside businesses, on the street, please wear your mask before you come in. No, you cannot come in. You cannot come in without wearing a mask. Cases were rising all the way until late April. They plateau in May. The mask mandate goes in. Place, continues to be implemented, and cases just explode. All the way until summer, into August. It doesn't stop. Cases don't plateau until the end of July 27th, and then begin to decline again. The mask mandate had no statistical correlation between stopping the spread of coronavirus. On and on. Hawaii. Businesses are required to wear masks indoors April 20th. Cases are already sliding down at this point at a high of about 20 per day, right? Until in early April. The mandate goes in place on April 20th. It had already fallen to about 10. All right. And then it stops, a couple of drips and drabs here in the case until June, middle of June, with the mask mandate still in force, it starts to rise. They put an outdoor mandate in place, which is what we're talking about now with the CDC on July 7th, and cases explode. By the end of August, they're up to 180. No correlation. All right. And if you really zoom in on that time, and I'm afraid that this will freeze if I show them this, but I will tweet it out. Okay. If you show where the mask mandate, look at this. Laura can see it. Look at this. There's the outdoor. This is it's a plot band on a line chart, folks. Okay. Here is the mask mandate, whatever day it is, indoor businesses, outdoors, whatever it may be, different places do different things. And the line chart shows you the daily cases. Clearly, it didn't do jack. All right. Let's go to California, where Gavin Newsom just the other day, which is why I retweeted Ruben's tweet, because I knew we were going to talk about this today. All right. This guy is just a walking platitude, just like Anthony Fauci.
I know.
He has completely failed the state of California. But throw out a platitude, and hopefully enough of the population is stuck in an irrational state of fear, and I'll win a recall. All right, so in Los Angeles, they imposed a mask mandate on April 10th. Cases were already actually on their way down, daily cases. However, after the April 10th mandate, they explode. All right, and by the time it's June, they're over 250 daily cases. Orange County, which put a mask mandate in June 16th and 18th. They had a steadily rising caseload, just like everybody else. And then cases exploded. What I'm saying is San Diego, which did theirs on May 1st, actually lower than Los Angeles. I mean, some of this is just about pre-existing health law. Some of this is about population density, of course, right? I mean, there's so many factors that can go into this. But generally, everybody follows the same trend. Their mask mandate goes into place on May 1st in San Diego. They plateau for a few days. By the end of May, they're already on their way to the moon. Did nothing. Did absolutely nothing. Now, it's so nice when you can make these hypothetical arguments and these like etherical arguments that aren't based in any data. Well, it would have been so much worse. Really? Because the models, like the Imperial College model, which set all of this off, their modeling, by the way, showed if Donald Trump did not close down the economy and others did not close down the economy, that it would end up in at least 500,000 deaths. Well, guess what? We have 500,000 deaths anyway. Upwards of 2.4 million. It took 7 months for the now disgraced author of this study to even recognize the impact masks may have on his model. So this argument, well, it could have been so much worse. Not according to the doomsday models. It was going to be Armageddon. It took 7 months to incorporate it. By the way, none of those restrictions applied to him when he snuck out to have an affair. Right? Well, that's what. This is crazy. You have to be stupid at this point. You have to be an idiot to believe anything on its face that you hear from these people, to include bureaucrats at the CDC, who, thanks to Reuters now after the election, we know are the ones who bungled the testing regime to begin with. Everyone took it's just so easy to blame the president. Everybody took the blame and dumped it on the president. We now know bureaucrats not only bungled it, but they were lying to the White House about it. So what is the president to do? What is any president to do about a bunch of a self-perpetuating bureaucracy, by the way? They now don't need a president to govern. They are governing all on their own. They don't need the voters' approval. They do whatever the hell they want. What are you to do if you are a president when you have a rogue bureaucracy seemingly out to make you look bad, to raise the body count so you lose an election? And lying to you about the testing regime. What are you to do? You're only as good as the information your subordinates give you. Those are the people, the media, and all of the so-called science, the science worshipers who can't define science because science is not truth. Science is a process by which you try to discover the truth. An ever-evolving process. It is not an absolute truth. But these are what the so-called faux science worshipers want you to do. Blindly follow these idiots. New York, April 17th. We all know how it went in New York. Actually, cases rose a little bit. They dipped again. Rose a little bit. They dipped again. Again, no statistical correlation. Let's look to the red America. So in Kansas, for instance, they had a spike in mid to late April. All right. Then they saw their cases decline again. By mid to late June, their caseload was rising. The media coverage was just a constant barrage. They put a mask mandate in place on July 3rd. It does nothing to stem the rise. On August 5th, there is now what we now know to be an infamous press conference by the health director where he used talk about the perversion of science and data, where he used misleading information to impose the masks further. Because by this time, people are saying, why are we wearing masks? It doesn't seem to be doing anything. So instead of giving at least some kind of sound argument, or at least coming up with the fact, well, it could have been worse, and not lying with phony numbers. No, it was even worse. About 5 days later, cases begin to skyrocket again. Moving on, West Virginia. Generally an up and down pattern throughout the spring of the early pandemic. The mask mandate is imposed on July 6th in the middle of an already steep decline. It's about 30 cases a day now, rising. The mask mandate went in place after it reached above 40 cases per day. All right. A week later, they're up to 61 cases per day. Another week later, they're up to 75 cases per day. Another week later, they're up to 90 cases per day. You get my point.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Red Mississippi hits their plateau, is on their way down on August 3rd, and imposes, well, first it was by county, then it was by state. All right. It was statewide on August 4th. It was, I think the majority of counties were already imposed by August 3rd. But they're already on their decline. They plateaued a little under 400 cases per day. And then by August, early August, they had already fallen to about 325. The mask mandate goes in place and cases fall. But that's not a correlation because we have a preceding period of what is clearly a declining trend. They put the mask mandate in place in the middle of the decline. I mean, this is how the mask-wearing Marys and the blind followers of the Department of Perpetual Pandemic Paranoia, okay, this is how they twist this stuff to make it look like it's working. Go ahead.
There's a new name for them. They are called COVIDians.
COVIDians. The COVIDians from Planet Paranoia.
Yes.
Okay? I mean, look, this is not to say you don't take a pandemic seriously. None of this is to say, but there is a difference between taking a pandemic seriously and between, and look, there's a difference between taking a pandemic seriously and then being so stupid that even polls bear out now that you are completely lost in the sauce about what your understanding of this pandemic is. The risks that are posed to an average American or Americans between certain ages who have no pre-existing conditions. Gallup, Pew, us. This is a political pandemic. We can literally break it down by party to see how many people, who knows what. If you are a Democrat, you really think there's a risk to somebody under the age of 64 with no pre-existing conditions. So much so that you think you're about 50-50 likely to end up in the hospital. It's simply not true. That's simply not true. And in fact, even Republicans are misinformed. They're just not as misinformed as Democrats are. And that is a testament to the media using this pandemic and a certain political party using this pandemic and a certain wing of the government, which is the vast majority of it, using this pandemic for political purposes, for a political outcome. Not a public health outcome. Defeat the president, remove certain liberties, and make sure the good old crisis in Leviathan bears out its usual pattern, which is that what you lose during these times of crises, you will not get back. At least not in full. You give them an inch, they'll take a foot. When the crisis is over, maybe you get 6 or 5 inches back. Maybe. That is the pattern. Robert Hicks, Crisis in Leviathan. Better read it. Philippines, mask mandate goes into place on April 2nd. Cases are plateaued through most of the spring and summer until around late June, where it just explodes. And it goes from the mask. By the time the mask mandate was put in place, there was less than 5 daily cases. All right. But by August, after the mask mandate went in force on April 2nd, by August, they are well above 40. They're about 42. And then in August 15th, they're about 44 cases per day. Moving on. Peru. This is interesting. This is one of my favorite, okay? And daily cases per million, okay? Lockdowns, they closed the border March 16th. cases continue to rise throughout the month of April. There's a national mask mandate put in place on April 7th. Cases continue to rise. On May 11th, about a week later, because cases are still rising, they start enforcing that mandate in businesses, particularly supermarkets, food markets, and then cases continue to rise. By the time June 1st rolls around, when they begin to phase a reopening, cases are about 200 daily per million. All right. So they went, when they imposed this lockdown, to about not just lockdown, but the masks and everything, below 20. We can just safely say below 20, because there was nothing when they imposed the lockdown. They did it on fear. They imposed it based on fear. The mask mandate came into place when there was about 10 cases per day. All right. It explodes. By June 1st, they begin to phase reopen, and a shocking thing happens. Cases actually begin to decline. Throughout the month of June, cases fall from below 200 daily to about 100 daily by mid-June. By August, they start to rise again. No additional action is taken. They continue to reopen. By the end of August, they are reopening, and cases begin to fall again, all the way from 260 daily per million to 165. One of my favorite charts on all of this. All right, and moving on, Los Angeles. Let's take a closer look at LA. A stay-at-home order is issued on March 22nd. Cases are about 20 per day, and yet it continues to rise. The initial mask mandate is put into place when they're on a slight decline, by the way, on April 10th. But this is what happens with these things. They go up, they dip. They go up, they dip. They go up. That's why you look at a trend, not a week-to-week trend. You look at an overall time trend. All right. Mask mandate, April 10th. Cases dip, and then for a day, and then by April 14th, they're on the rise again. An outdoor mask mandate is put into place. What we are talking about right now. An outdoor mask mandate is put into place on May 14th. At this time, the great and powerful Oz, Dr. Fauci, is back and forth again. By this time, he is already starting to lean towards, oh, you know what? We got the PPE now. You should mask up even outdoors. Even though a week before I just said, don't mask up outdoors. Yet cases continue to rise. All right. By the time it is mid-July, they are well almost to 300 daily a day. Garcetti attempts to cancel Halloween on September 8th. Remember that? And cases had fallen to nearly 50 a day at that point already. So if this was about the science and the data,
because we got to follow the signs,
why would you attempt to restrict liberty even further on the single largest period of decline in daily caseloads, new cases? Why would you do that? Things are headed in the right direction. It's just incredible. Spain and France, which I couldn't even believe somebody tried to rebut me with France. I thought that was a no-brainer, but apparently not. All right. Spain first. Let's go. Implements a full lockdown on March 14th. Cases still explode. They go from about 20 daily cases a day when they impose that lockdown to over 170. Cases begin to decline regardless in the middle of April. And they put in place on May 2nd a public transit mask mandate. So if you're taking the subway, you're taking public transportation of any kind, you must put on a mask. Even though caseloads have fallen at this point to below 30 a day, from over 170 a day to below 30 a day. Then, just for good measure, even though cases continue again to decline to over 10 a day, on May 19th, they just slap an outdoor mask mandate. All public areas. Now the lockdown begins to end. The mask mandate is in force. And by July, cases, even with the mask on, I don't know how this could possibly happen. They explode again to an all-time high. 230, over 230 daily cases a day. How could that happen?
Oh, Cuomo must have been involved.
How could that happen?
Just joking.
Mass work. How could this happen? France. I mean, this is just the worst chart for mask-wearing Marys. The worst chart. And look, maybe some masks work, maybe some masks don't. I'm willing to even speculate that. Maybe some, they're not built right. They're not built sufficiently, like some of the doctors we talk to. And the particles are just too small. It doesn't matter. And then some other doctors at the VA we spoke to, it said even if the masks were made correctly, and the N95s, because they're not standard across the board, depending who you get the N95 from, it could be completely different. An N95 they showed us at the VA looked like a fortified, it was totally different. And that was an older model, by the way. The new stuff they were cranking out was like light, and comparatively, it was clearly a difference in the construction of the mask. Different layers, right? Clearly a different construction in the mask. And they say even if everybody was wearing masks that we can be confident in, it still doesn't matter because the public is not trained in the art of mask wearing. And you see that all the time when you go to the grocery store, don't you? Woman pulls her mask down, itches her nose, and then types her PIN number for her card in.
And then puts the mask back.
And then puts the mask back on.
Because that worked.
I mean, I know you have seen this before.
Well, the science in that, if she doesn't see it happening, that means the germs don't come after.
Right.
Just like, you hide in your house and you can hide away from
Obviously,
COVID.
Laura.
Come on, Richie.
Full lockdown is implemented on March 17th in France. Cases are on the rise. All right. But when the lockdown is put into a place, it's about 12 a day. It explodes to about 70. And again, these are per million. All right. And remember this, guys, we're talking about per million. All right. The lockdown goes into place. They explode by April 1st. They're up to just under 70 per million a day. And they start to decline again. All right. By May, they put in place a full lockdown anyway. All right. And they are roughly at 15 cases per day. And it declines after the lockdown until about the 27th of May when it starts to rise again. And we go out through the month of June where it's an up and down. Typically it looked like it was getting better for a little bit there. You guys remember this, I'm sure. In France, it was one of the more harder hit places. But again, is that because of any of this, or is that because their population is not healthy? Is it because they smoke a lot? Is it because their public health system sucks? I mean, same thing with Italy, Laura. They still smoke. I don't know how much traveling you guys have done, but these people smoke in the hospital. I mean, this is like, they still do. I'm not kidding. All right. So fines for not wearing masks are put into place on July 2nd. Why? Not because there's been a greater caseload. There hasn't been. It has roughly stayed at around 10 cases per million a day throughout the month of July. Yet, cases begin to rise. By mid-August, they're at about 30 per million per day, and they impose a mask mandate for indoor workspaces. All right. And yet cases continue to rise. They think, well, maybe it's outdoor. And on August 28th, by the time they're at 62, a little about 62 per million per day, they put the mask mandate nationally, Paris, suburbs, right? And it continues to rise. By mid-September, they have exploded to over 150 per million per day. And I can't believe somebody actually responded to me on Twitter with France. I don't know where you learned to plot bans, to plot a ban on a line chart. But this is one of the worst. France is one of the worst examples on whether or not masks work. All right. I mean, we've got a bunch of other stuff here where we could go over, but I think you generally get the idea here. Japan is a pointless example. A pointless example because of the testing regime, which, by the way, we had problems with here. So, and when we were looking at some of these other places, France, Italy, all right, some of these, Spain too, some of these places had widespread problems with their testing regimes. Defunct test kits that went out that were bought from South Korea, that were borrowed from China. These testing kits were bogus. So even to believe some of that initial baseline data, you have to ignore that. And you have to ignore the possibility that some of those second waves weren't initial infections and not, not alleged reinfections, which we now know are extremely unlikely. The idea that you can get infected from another variant that we know about. We're talking about a ludicrous proposition here. So to believe 0.0001 chance of reinfection, you have to ignore problems with the testing regime. To believe that even some of that improvement throughout late spring and early summer could have been attributed to masks and shutdowns, you have to believe the testing regime. So first of all, the overall trends don't show that anyway. So you have to ignore that as well. You have to pretend like a few weeks in between the general long-term trend is somehow more significant than the overall trend, which I certainly hope and nobody with a math brain would suggest we do, because that would be stupid or dishonest, actually. Because if you're a person of, if you're a numbers person, then you know that's not true. And of course, in the case of Japan, now that we know so much about comorbidities and underlying health conditions, they're a healthier society than us. They're a healthier society than Europe. Some of the CDC early burden estimates show at least 60% of all COVID deaths have a comorbidity, obesity. It could be higher than that in the end. These burden estimates will be changed and revised a lot, just like any other pneumonia, flu, every year. Sometimes 2 years in the future, we'll see significant revisions to burden estimates. It's not uncommon. Go ahead.
I'm just looking forward to the data that comes out after wearing masks for this long. The effects that it actually has on our health.
The people who have breathing conditions. We made these decisions. We jumped these guns, and we just didn't really throwing caution to the wind. And I know, here we go. This is about when I get disconnected.
But I'm saying you're substituting.
Here's about when I get disconnected. The mRNA vaccine. Dr. Fauci repeatedly says that all of the data we have shows that if we're going to have a widespread problem with vaccinations, then it is at the time of vaccination or shortly thereafter. But he doesn't know that, because we're talking about antigen method vaccines like Johnson & Johnson, which is why maybe part of the reason or decision making that went into the polling of Johnson & Johnson in some of these areas. But we don't know that about mRNA treatments. We don't know anything about mRNA treatments. We have never widely distributed mRNA vaccinations like this. So how the hell does he know?
Well, he has a crystal ball. He sees the future, too.
Right, but you know what? We're supposed to be cautious when it comes to variants, Laura. We're supposed to be super cautious about, well, it could be reinfected, from what we know now, and it's like all over in the CDC. Are you ready? Where is it? Right here. I mean, they continue to make comments like this. All right. Where is it here? Hold on. I'm going to find it.
The subtitle
because this is important.
I'm looking at, though,
oh, right.
like what you can start to do, that's just ridiculous.
Basically, they keep saying, well, we from what we know now, okay, based on what we know now, this, or, yes, it shows this, but that's only what we know now. But when it comes to the mRNA vaccines, that is like, we just have to just take it on face value. What we know right now is all we're ever going to know. What we know now about vaccines and adverse impacts, that's going to apply to mRNA. We're just supposed to take that on face value. And I'm not telling people don't get the vaccine. I'm not trying to be, you make a personal decision for yourself. We're all in it together nonsense is a bunch of crap. We're not in it together. Dr. Fauci is not going to come and help you when your job is destroyed. That's just an economic inconvenience to him. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Or inconvenient economically. Because he's been living off of the government teat forever. He doesn't know what it's like to have to be subjected to bad policy making. He's immune from it. Dr. Fauci has antibodies against recession. Okay? He cannot be infected by recession due to bad fiscal, monetary, or economic policy. He's immune to it. He's got the government teat vaccine. He's never going to have that problem that you're going to have. But also, he shouldn't be running around. If you are an 18, whatever, some of these women that develop the blood clots, we asked them to put themselves at risk. Some of these women had almost no risk to developing complications to COVID-19. Well, it's other people. We're all in this together. It's other people. Is it? To them, do they feel like we're all in it together now? One dead, one on life support? Who's in it with them? Their family. No, they're on their own now. And so are 10 million Americans and 2.5 million working mothers. Dr. Fauci's not running to their rescue.
Nope. Not paying their bills.
And a single mother. Maybe she's 30 years old. No pre-existing conditions whatsoever. But she's told if she's going to be a good citizen, she's got to go out and get vaccinated. She develops a problem from a vaccination. Who's going to be in it for her kids?
She just orphaned her kid.
Are we all in it together? Is Dr. Fauci going to go and adopt her children and make sure? I mean, get the hell out of here with this we're all in it together nonsense. All these celebrities. Britney Spears couldn't even bring groceries to somebody. This is a joke, you know? You're talking about real world implications. It's not Twitter. It's not that's not real world. Platitudes on Twitter. That's not real. But the damage that could be done is real. From lockdowns. From economic hardship. From forcing people with bronchial issues to wear a mask. A completely healthy woman developing a blood clot. And yes, it is true that those are very low numbers. What happened with Johnson & Johnson, even just compared to other vaccines, very low numbers. It's true. Compared to other vaccines, that sounds relatively safe. But with other vaccines and other general seasonal viruses, we don't shame people into taking the risk of hurting themselves based on some argument about whether or not you're a good citizen. All right. Here is our president walking out to announce the change in the CDC guidelines. Again, these guidelines say that those who are fully vaccinated against the COVID-19 virus don't need to wear face masks when walking, hiking, biking, running alone, or gathering in small groups outside. Yet, tell me what's wrong with this picture.
As you can see, he's now left the North Portico, now walking with a mask on.
Look at the cool shades, dude, right? Did you guys notice what was wrong with that picture? Here's our fully vaccinated President Geriatric Joe Biden with a mask on, outdoors. Look, he was even jogging alone there for a second just to show you he's real healthy. They just gave him a booster right before he went out. All right. They just gave him the JFK mix.
Yeah.
All right. All right. And here he is coming out to tell everybody that now, for those of you who were good citizens, you can now go outside without a mask. By the way, why am I wearing a mask? I'm fully vaccinated. I'm alone. Hell, I'm even jogging alone. If anybody doubts how, look, this is why that what Rand Paul said to Fauci was so important. Of course it's virtue signaling.
Mm-hmm.
Of course it is. It's not based in any science. The CDC, folks, the CDC just said that you can go out now without. Oh, there we go. I'm done. Oh, there, I'm back. Okay, good. A little bit too much at once. I don't want to overwhelm. I don't want to overwhelm the system. Let's pull back. I don't want to overburden the system. Let's put a no browser mandate in force.
I said you use too many words.
It doesn't get any more ridiculous than that. It does not get any more ridiculous than that. Speaking of which, brings us to the State of the Union, which isn't a State of the Union. When we come back, we will be talking about this. We had a quasi-election. We are now going to have a quasi-State of the Union. We have quasi-GDP numbers. We have quasi-consumer spending numbers. We have quasi-personal income and outlays numbers. Nothing is real anymore. This idea, all of these people who said for 4 years we were going to destroy the norms of our government have destroyed the norms of our government and our society in general. If Congress can meet to pass bills and members of Congress are vaccinated, then why could we not have a State of the Union? Even if you believe this small group crap, which means you're ignoring all of the data that we have on the ability of antibodies that you either naturally produce from fighting off this virus or the vaccinations. Even if you ignore the data that both of those do prevent you from being infected from the variants, we still could have had a Jeffrey pull your tubing kind of Zoom. Nobody had to notice Joe Biden didn't have pants on. We could have had Joe Biden at the top and the historic backdrop we keep hearing about from the media, a female vice president of color and a female speaker of the House, all subordinate to the old white guy with a mask on.
I mean, come on.
Would have made for a hell of an optic, wouldn't it? Optical show.
The optics would have been beautiful.
But we didn't, and it was canceled, so we don't have a State of the Union. Because can we be real here for a second? Can any president with a straight face look at the camera and say, "My fellow Americans, I'm happy to report the State of the Union is strong"? No, it's not. It's not. And so we put that off, and now we're going to do this quasi one. It's not really, you will see what I mean. Tonight will not be a State of the Union. It's not a normal State of the Union. That norm is gone. Just like the norms of elections are gone. The norms of judicial review are gone. The norms of Senate consent are gone. The norms of prosecutorial conduct are gone. The norms of impeaching a president are gone. The norms of a president's right to have a conversation in confidence with another foreign leader are gone. The norms of children going to school are gone. Playing football are gone. Baseball, basketball are gone. We'll be back after 2 minutes.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chippies is restless, wasting neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Critical. We're back. All right, we're back. Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the page, People's Pundit Daily on Facebook. Follow us on Locals, folks. peoplespundit.locals.com. I'm actually thinking, because we're coming up on this mark now, I was actually thinking of maybe just running a smaller poll first, because we did raise some money. Maybe it's cheaper to just do like Biden's approval again. So maybe I'll do that. If you want to support that, you can. Public Polling Project link is down below.
It's broken.
It's not. It should be fine.
I just clicked it.
Okay. bigdatapoll.com/public polling project. All right. And you could just go to bigdatapoll.com and you'll see at the bottom.
You can follow
You'll
it.
see on the, we have our blog at the bottom where we, blog out with some interesting stuff. And of course, the public polling project is in the blog. So you can find a link there. If it's, it's bigdatapoll.com/public polling project. And I was just thinking maybe it would be a good thing to get Biden's approval numbers on that 100-day mark. Again, we had them just a couple weeks ago now, 54%. Fox News, their 100-day, 54%. Washington Post, who has years of this, they have years of a track record on this, 52%. The lowest of any other president at the 100-day mark, save for, guess who? Guess who is in that category? Gerald Ford and Donald Trump for the Washington Post. That's where Joe Biden is at the 100-day mark. Right there with Donald Trump and Gerald Ford. All right. And then, of course, and by the way, because of their the response bias, the artifacts that are built into their methodology, it skews Democrat. So I wouldn't be surprised if actually Trump was a little bit higher and and Joe Biden's a little bit lower. It's possible, like I said to you, we had too many liberals, whether they were urban or rural or suburban. We had too many liberal women, and I admitted that. We do what we can. Everybody does the best job they can, but I wouldn't be surprised if we had Biden a little bit high. and he was around 52%. Again, he's ticked down as of yesterday. And Rasmussen, I didn't look today. Maybe you can check out Rasmussen's homepage, see where Biden is, 51%. So we have everybody, all of us, generally in the same universe. Our range for Joe Biden has been 48 to 54. 54 that we just did was the high. We have never had him higher. He has been 48 twice and 52 once, and now 54. So you have that universe, all within generally statistically speaking, in the same area. Sampling errors be damned, right? People don't want to talk about sampling errors.
40.
No, not for today. If he did, it means he dropped quite a bit overnight because they're a rolling average. So if he's in the 40s today,
The Rasmussen Report's daily presidential tracking poll for Wednesday shows that 48% of likely voters approve.
Wow. Then he dropped significantly overnight.
And
Listen,
50% disapprove.
If that's and 50%, yeah.
disapprove.
So we find the same thing generally, that there's a stronger disapproval index for Joe Biden than there is approval. So he may be above water, but it's because of these like somewhat approves and then also undecideds. Rasmussen's a little bit different. Obviously, they do likely voters, but they are the last remaining daily tracking poll. Gallup doesn't even do it anymore. But you have all of us in the general ballpark. And then you have people like Harris X or Harvard Harris and others in the 60 plus. I mean, that's nonsense. Just total nonsense. It is impossible for Joe Biden right now to be anywhere near 60. To be at 54 was a pretty big surprise for us. It would take a transcendent figure, as I've said a million times before. It would take a transcendent figure like Barack Obama to get those kinds of numbers. You're talking about 20% or more of each Republican and independents deciding that all of a sudden they didn't vote for Joe Biden, but now they like him. And they like him so much, they're going to, my own ideology be damned. That's just not the country we live in anymore, folks. That's why Donald Trump was never going to get any higher than, I think 52 or 54 was our high for Donald Trump. He never got any higher than that. And that was after his, after he signed, after he wiped away TPP, he went up for us a little bit and imposed the Muslim ban, which was widely popular, by the way. The travel restrictions from those countries and extreme vetting were widely popular. More popular than Donald Trump, in fact. All right. So I would tell you that a lot of these other polls, they're heavily relying on these panels, which we use panels too. We do. But a lot of them are consumer panels. They are not voter file panels. That's number one. So you're not putting a tight enough screen. And number two, especially during COVID, those panels have gotten very metro and very liberal. When we first started to pioneer online surveys, it was actually too conservative, right? A little bit too conservative. In 2016, dating all the way back, we had to wait to help Hillary Clinton. It was too conservative. And then now, it's more than a 180. It's beyond, it leans liberal, far beyond at any point when it leaned conservative. You understand what I'm saying? And the pandemic has had a big impact on that. And I don't know any other panel provider that we work with that would deny that. We all have these conversations. There is no doubt they have gotten significantly more liberal. You have all of these professional class people sitting around pulling their tubins. They have nothing else better to do. They work 5 hours a day from home, run around the house a little bit in their underwear. What else are they going to do? You know what? I hate Orange Man bad. I'm signing up. Click, click, disapprove, disapprove, approve, approve. I'm serious. That's what's going on right now. I'm joking. I'm making a joke, but that is why you see some of these online panels just widely miss. Morning Consult for Politico. Those were some really bad numbers. Biden plus 11, Biden plus 10, talking about in battleground states. By the way, we will have Matt Brainerd on. I'm just going to say this now because we're going to have Matt on, and Matt and I are going to talk about some of the findings that both of us have had. Because you're going to talk about how badly wrong these polls were. Matt is going to talk about what he has found in Wisconsin with indefinitely confined ballots. Those who said they were indefinitely confined, which has been very strict in the past. Why? Because in Wisconsin, you can get around verification procedures if you are indefinitely confined. There are usually about 4,000 or so in any given election. We're looking at hundreds of thousands of these ballots this last election.
And then we're going to elaborate.
In fact, I have
data
the number right
means
here.
behind that.
In fact, I have the number right here. Hold up. Here we go. There were, I thought I had it right available. You know what? Let's just wait for Matt to come on and tell them.
Yeah, no.
All right. And yeah, let's
before
not
you do
speculate. Let Matt do it here. All right. And I don't know if we'll probably have him on what are the odds on Monday, maybe, or maybe we'll have him on inside the numbers. We'll see. What are the odds?
It would make sense.
Yeah, it would make probably more sense to have him on inside the numbers. I think.
I think it'd be too busy.
I think it'd be too busy on what are the odds. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. All right. So with that in mind, that'll be awesome, and we'll go over that. And that just goes to show you that even more so how probably demonstrably false the assumptions were for these pollsters going ahead in 2020. It was just never true, folks, that some of these states were competitive. This just was. So if you're worried about how badly the polling was in like Michigan or Wisconsin, the plus 17 in Wisconsin, I would beg you not to forget that I told you all through the summer and into the fall that Iowa was not competitive, that Ohio was not competitive. I actually thought Iowa would be a little bit closer than Ohio this time, maybe a couple of points more Biden than it was for Hillary Clinton in 2016. In the end, they were about identical. All right. But polling Ohio was never shaky. Right. So the Fox Biden +5 was never reality. The New York Times Biden +4 was never reality. The Quinnipiac Biden +5. That was crazy. Ludicrous. Go back and find, when you have some spare time, go back and find the episode when I had a complete meltdown and opened up the overnight tracking in Ohio to show you guys. That is when Fox dropped their Biden +5. And I'm like, what the beep? We're polling Ohio right now. Here is the raw data. Here is what it is when I have to manipulate it to even get it to a Trump +4. Remember how badly I had to manipulate it? Really manipulate. Like an electorate that was never going to happen.
Not in their dreams would it happen.
And we're still seeing this again the other day in Florida. D +6. Meanwhile, DeSantis is still romping by 12 points. But D +6 in Florida? Do I have the freaking... I don't think I have it anymore on this thing. I think I put it all on the other streaming software. There is no D +6 in Florida anymore. There never was during this election period. There was never going to be a D plus anything. Florida was always going to be R plus something. We just didn't know it was. We didn't know it was going to be R plus. I think it was 8 in the exit polls. Our Florida poll was R +4, and we had Trump up by like 2.6 or something like that. And I took it off the table. I said, look, 2.6 doesn't sound like a lot, but I know Florida. I know Florida like nobody else knows Florida. 2.6 is a rout. There was just, you could see it in the numbers. There were just the demographic groups. There was no way for Biden to make that up. No way.
It in 1 hour, Florida.
No, less than an hour.
I think, no.
I'm projecting. It was like
48 minutes.
maybe 48 minutes.
I think it was 48 minutes. I'll have to go back.
It was over. It was a red right hook. I mean, so my point is, forget about even talk when we get into this conversation with Matt about what he may have found in the Midwest. I mean, just remember there were a ton of other states that were not really competitive. They weren't. And we were led to believe that they were. In September, I think, I said, Florida's off the table, guys. Let's just pull the Midwest. This election's coming down to the Midwest. All right. And that's what happened. That is exactly what happened. And it wouldn't make sense if Matt found something pretty serious in Wisconsin. I mean, it would make sense to me because the only reason why we had Biden a hair ahead in Wisconsin, is because basically the electorate we modeled, which turned out not to be the electorate that showed up. Wisconsin was several points more Republican than we modeled it. By the way, so was Pennsylvania. And so was Michigan. Just saying. All right. With that in mind, the quasi, back to the norms, destroying the norms.
Oh, are you going to touch on the India?
What we're doing with India is just horrific. You know, I have friends in India, journalist friends, and it may be the only country in the world, to include Israel, where the media actually liked Donald Trump. All right. And the people loved him. And they saw us as now a potentially, like, maybe we can reach our potential, our alliance, right? And because India has been more than happy to balance against Pakistan and other, Muslim nations that have been problems for us. They were more than happy to help balance against China. And they just didn't have the confidence in the leadership to do that. Now here we are again with Joe Biden instead of Donald Trump, and they're in a precarious situation. You have India. I don't know what accounts for this other wave. I don't know that anybody knows yet, to be honest. It could have been, certainly testing has something to do with it. But that's not it in a nutshell. But I will say this. Here we have all of these vaccines that we're not going to use. And they're begging us for them. They're begging us for them. And we won't give it to them. There seems to be, since, you have others like Israel and others, they used it. There seems to be no legitimate reason. India is going back to being treated like a secondary nation, a secondary ally. Yes. That's the bigger story here. All right. And that's unfortunate, because if you've heard us have foreign policy shows before, there is all of these, again, the norms people, they defended the hell out of NATO. We're supposed to look at Britain as our number one ally. We're supposed to look at France and Germany. These are our allies, our European. These are weak countries. Horribly weak countries who are too worried about their national health care systems to be any help to us on defense. NATO's a joke that has been outdated for years. The Warsaw Pact is dissolved. NATO was a balancing coalition against the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact is gone. Vladimir Putin is the leader of a still strong but declining superpower. And the problem is China. And the two allies that can help us the most with that are Japan. And Trump got along famously with Abe, as a matter of fact. The only thing I fault against Donald Trump is that he should have pushed harder against the post-World War II order that basically doesn't allow Japan to have a military. Don't worry, we'll defend you. How the hell are we going to defend Japan when we can't defend ourselves? How are we going to defend Germany when we can't defend ourselves? Japan is literally a nation filled with generations upon generations of warriors who, by the way, consequently hate the Chinese. They were probably our strongest adversary ever. And I say turn them loose. I say turn them loose. Because unlike France, which goes to the other person's question, Japan wants to preserve their culture.
Yeah.
They are proud of their history. And it's a history that's worth preserving. Not only worth preserving, it's a history worth being a friend of. How does a tiny little island kick the crap out of a giant superpower for 1,000 years? One that is our single biggest threat right now. And the other one, of course, being India. That should be America's 21st century balancing coalition. Not the stale, corrupt, cowardly, and weak allies of the old world. They can't even wipe their own you-know-whats. They certainly are not going to defend when the time comes. They're going to get run over like they got run over in the 20th century. They weren't even that good of an ally back then. France folded like an omelet, man.
Well, they came through.
Or they scrambled like an omelet and folded like a cheap suit.
Yes. But they came through during the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, I mean, we'll
They were still late.
just keep talking about that forever. I mean, which people do. Yeah, they were a couple years late on that one too. Thank you for boxing in. Thank you for boxing the British in at the last minute. Cornwallis, be damned. All right, Cornwallis is not Xi Jinping. Okay, I mean, times have changed here. We need a new. That's the one thing that I did really like about Donald Trump. His foreign policy was a realist foreign policy. And for those who are like me and just decided to study everything because I felt like it, I went on like this study mission. In security studies, in the world of academia, in international relations, realism rules. Nothing stands up against realism. No other school of thought, not neoconservatism, not neoliberalism, not liberal internationalism, not structuralism, nothing. It's an argument between whether you're an offensive or defensive realist or somewhere in the middle. You either are more like Waltz, the defensive realist, or you're more like Mearsheimer, an offensive realist. But Donald Trump called his foreign policy doctrine principled realism. Meaning, yes, we're not going to just be stone cold realists who don't take our American ideals into in consideration. But we're also not going to have this stupid platitude based foreign policy of Jimmy Carter to Bill Clinton, or no, Jimmy Carter to George W. Bush, because even the platitudes fueled neoconservatism too. The natural state is liberty, and given the chance, everyone will want to govern themselves. That is not true. Given the chance, if the world was just filled with democracies, we'd war with less with each other. That is not true. There is no more of an inclination to war between tyrannical or dictatorial nations than there is democracies. That's just not a fact. That's not a fact. It doesn't hold up to empirical evidence. So for once, we did have a president who recognized there's a joke in foreign policy academia, which is if you cannot defend your thesis, go work at the State Department. That's a joke. Because all of the frauds like Bruce Russert, the democratic peace theory, and the Bill Kristols and Paul Wolfowitzes and blah, 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 they're laughing stocks of the international relations academic community. Laughing stocks. The foreign policy establishment in the District of Columbia and beyond, or I would just say the American foreign policy establishment, is filled with a bunch of quacks who hold unrealistic worldviews that don't hold up to scrutiny. They see the world the way they want to see it. They do not see the world the way it is. And finally, we had somebody who did recognize that. Sure, India is not perfect, and it's got a lot of work to do, but you know what? That's what's best for the U.S. national interest. They are a stronger ally with more military, economic, and latent power than any European nation combined. Britain, France, Germany could be a powerhouse given their industrial economics. They could be. But they're no longer, after the Second World War, just like Japan, they're no longer, they're actually a little bit more strict. They're not allowed to have a military. With Japan, it's not that they're not allowed. We just made the deal with them that we will defend them. They don't need a military. It's ridiculous. Japan may have been an enemy a long, long time ago. Now they're an ally. Turn them loose. Turn them loose.
This presidency really concerns me.
It's erratic.
Outside of our borders.
Totally erratic foreign policy.
Well, it's just the ones that actually took a stand during Trump, right?
Let me get you a little closer there.
It's all right. The ones that actually took a stand during Trump's presidency, I am, my heart
goes
really
out to them. Israel, certain people in Ukraine.
They took a serious leap.
They're literally marked.
Because they felt safe.
Yeah, they're Trump. Literally marked. That's why Vladimir Zelensky is effectively neutered right now. He's been neutered since the impeachment, actually. He made bad decision, much like Donald Trump, to surround himself with the old guard.
Yeah.
too many of the old guard. And he did it in a way to try to reach out. Same mistakes as Donald Trump. Let me reach out to them, try to make them feel part of the process.
Yep.
And they stabbed them in the back. That's a real shame. And for those of you who don't know this by now, let me just tell you this definitively. Vladimir Zelensky won in a landslide on an anti-corruption message that targeted the corruption of the Obama and Biden allies in Ukraine. Your hero, Yovanovitch, isn't some victimized woman who lost her job, the civic servant under Donald Trump, that Donald Trump, the bully, ruined the career. No, she is a cutthroat, deeply
Evil.
corrupt, horrible woman who wanted the forces of Petro Poroshenko to remain in power.
That's all you need to say about her.
Ukraine, it's hard because I've said this before and I repeat this over and over. There's no good guys. There's no bad guys. There's bad guys and bad guys trying not to be that bad.
Yeah. That's a good
The
way.
embassy in Kiev, it is. It's true.
That's the best way to say
It is. It really is. And the embassy in Kiev, the U.S. embassy in Kiev, is known for their corruption. Our guys, folks, our people. They are known for their corruption and they are known for meddling in the affairs of others against Geneva. And they don't give a damn. And in fact, she did that, by the way, in a speech she gave. Joe Biden did it. There's a line where you don't meddle in the affairs of domestic affairs of foreign nations, of allies.
Yep.
And they do it. So I would just say, Laura's right. And Israel's another one, if they even hold on to power. Because, look, I'm just not going to be nice anymore about this. You have people like John McLaughlin, the president's pollster, running around the world giving leaders bad information. All right? Bibi Netanyahu could have won a resounding victory in his last election. He did not, despite the exit polls showing a whopping. He barely held on, and now he may not hold on this time. Likud may be a minority this time. Because John McLaughlin ran around telling Bibi Netanyahu and the Likud party that national security is all that he needed to carry the day. That all of the talk about healthcare and economic injustice was just, secondary. It's not. And that's not going to work on the Israeli voter forever. Not to mention the demographics of Israel are changing. You're letting people vote who don't have the best interest of Israel at heart. And then you have them appealing, the forces of those people, appealing to middle Israelis, saying, you know what, there are other concerns beyond national security.
Yeah.
How long are you going to let Hamas rockets scare you into voting Likud when you don't have good health care, when you don't have economic reforms that Bibi has been promising for years? And I admire the hell out of Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm not out here to be criticized.
I love Bibi.
I admire the hell out of him.
Hey, Bibi, call Rich.
His record, even before he was a politician, I admire him as a man, as what he has done in his life. But he has made promises. Oh, I won this time, and we won a resounding victory, and it was on the back of national security fears, right? And I promise you, economic reforms are coming. And they never came. And you have people like John filling their heads with this idea, that they can just keep this up. You can't keep it up. People want change in certain areas of society. And the threat that I'm the only one who can keep the Iron Dome working is not going to last forever. Fear never lasts forever, which is something the current political elite in America should take to heart right now. And fear never lasts forever. It didn't after 9/11. It didn't after multiple economic crises, and it will not now. It will not now.
You could already see
eventually the fog. Yep.
Yeah, lifts. The fatigue of
that's right.
That
fear
you get
fatigue.
Tired of the fear.
You tired
and
of
you get
afraid.
over it.
Yep.
And then it's you're just careless. You're like, whatever, I don't care anymore.
That's exactly right. And that'll happen here too. 100%. And it will definitely happen to you, BB, if it didn't already. Because I think you're at a point now where you may be it may be too late because it's going to be baked into the electoral cake.
So if somebody knows BB, tell BB.
Get out of here.
To email
I'm not
Laura.
using the show. I'm not using the show to promote.
Producer at People's Pundit Daily. I love you, BB.
She's a promoter. I'm not. But yeah, or at least find someone else who can do it, because I'm not doing this to take a professional shot at anybody. It's just the reality. Eric Cantor probably would still have his job today if he didn't listen to John.
A lot of people would have their job today, like the president.
maybe her and Robert think, well, I just think that
he gave bad advice.
The state polling was not good. The state polling was not good. It was not good. And if we, by the way, because some people are like, well, you didn't think Georgia was going to be close either. Well, we didn't poll Georgia because I wasn't paid by the president to poll every single state.
Yeah.
I was paid. People dictated where we polled. And I did a great job of polling where I was paid to poll. But if you're working for the campaign and the campaign says, here are millions, go to town, then you should have known Georgia was close.
Mm-hmm.
You should have known. You should have known that. Because after doing the runoff poll, it had to have been, they had to have seen that even before Republicans got angry, because Republicans still could have defeated both Warnock and Ossoff. Oh, yeah. They didn't. Democrats didn't win those runoffs. Republicans lost them. Mitch McConnell lost them. Purdue lost them. And Loeffler, however you say, they lost those races.
What I wanted to say is, if you can't rally behind your leader, especially if he's on your side, do you know what that shows other people? Whether you agree with him wholeheartedly or not. Yeah, it's disunity. It's dysfunction. It shows that you do not have the capability of uniting under a good cause.
That's right. Or any cause.
The people.
Your cause. Any cause.
Your cause.
It's just to show the dysfunction like that is not helpful to messaging at all. And 4 years of, instead of recognizing this is the only way forward for this party, they fought it like little children. You're so right. Petulant little children, just petulant little children, fighting, kicking, and screaming like little babies. Mitch McConnell even got his wife a cushy, nice little job. The money kept flowing in from China. I mean, what's your problem, Mitch? You should have been happy with that. Paul Ryan had to go, but that's because Paul Ryan promised too many people TPP. And that wasn't going to happen. Paul Ryan had to go because he had no more support. It got to the point where he was putting his own members in danger of being primaried because the House votes on the speaker. And if you cast a vote for Paul Ryan, by that point, you're in trouble. You could be primaried. He's so disliked that he could be primaried. As a matter of fact, do I have, and now is here we are at, I don't want to take the risk here, but I think it's very important. Where is the favorability ratings for congressional leaders? Bear with me, folks. Bear with me a hot second.
And then let's talk about.
I'm gonna upload them. I want people to see them because they're not in a great position. It's not like they're in any better of a position. I can't believe I saw on the Hill Republicans leaked the poll to the Hill showing Pelosi's favorability in the 30s. Well, congratulations. You're any better? You're any better? Mm-hmm. Next. We'd like to get your overall opinion of some people. Please indicate if you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of them, or if you have never heard of them or have no opinion. Look at Nancy Pelosi. Of course, it is true. And we had her, by the way, once again, big data poll is way ahead of everybody else. We had her dipping in the 30s below anybody else. All right. But Nancy Pelosi is viewed very unfavorably by 43%, 42.8 to be exact here in this poll. All right. But that doesn't mean it's no better than Kevin McCarthy. He's just got a lot of people saying they don't know him. Right. But his favorability rating barely hits. It doesn't even hit 30%. He's got just about a quarter, a little under a quarter, who have a very unfavorable opinion of him, and another 19% who have a somewhat unfavorable opinion. The most hated member of Congress is not Nancy Pelosi, even with that horrible, very unfavorable rating. It's, drumroll, Mitch McConnell. 37.1%, very unfavorable, and another 23.1% who are somewhat unfavorable, for a grand total of 6 in 10 registered voters who cannot stand the person who is the face of Senate Republicans. You have got to be kidding me. Nancy Pelosi's bad, but she's still 55. Kevin McCarthy is no bag of chips himself. Chuck Schumer actually isn't even all that bad. I hate to tell Republicans. He's not. 31.4%, very unfavorable. 13.2%, somewhat unfavorable, for a grand total, of course, of 44.6. So he's still, underwater, but he's not underwater like the rest of these folks. And I don't know how do you expect to take back the Senate when 6 in 10 can't stand your leader? When 6 in 10 can't stand your leader, who is telling the voters in Georgia, the working people in Georgia, that they're not good enough for $2,000. Well, the rest of the country and your benefactors are getting almost $2 trillion. Mm-hmm. How do you expect to keep 2 Senate seats in the Georgia runoff? I mean, this isn't rocket science, folks. It's not brain surgery. It is to get accurate numbers like we do at Big Data Poll. But once you see them, making the correct decisions is not hard. It's not hard making the correct decision.
Yes.
If Mitch McConnell truly did care about his party and his country, because it only follows, both parties think what they believe is best for their country. Although I'm not even sure about that anymore with Democrats.
Mitch stopped caring the moment he got voted in. Yeah. Once his foot crossed that threshold, he stopped.
You're assuming he ever cared.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
I mean, to get voted in. That's what I mean.
Oh, yeah, well, right.
I see what his foot crossed that threshold.
The bottom line is you can't find yourself in a position where you can do more good than harm if you are viewed like this. It only follows if you think your party has the best way forward and you're a hindrance to your party, then it only follows that you are also a hindrance to your country. Because if your party is the best one at affecting the best change, and has the best policy for more Americans than not, then you have to put that first. If Mitch McConnell really cared about his party and, as it follows, the country, then he would step down as the majority leader. He would no longer lead the Republican Party in the U.S. Senate. IOUs should not count more than how he is perceived by the public and the damage he can do to his party because of that perception. And Kevin, I know you've been waiting for the gavel for a very long time. But nobody knows who the hell you are. And you're asking for a very tall order here. For the rest of the 3 in 10 Americans who don't know who you are, you want the vast majority of them to like you. When you are already grossly underwater. Mm-hmm. That is very difficult. Again, he's not in Mitch position, but he's in a horrible position.
Yeah, but he's in a I don't know you and I don't like you.
Yeah, he's so he's technically not there yet, but he actually has the potential to be in a worse position. And the reason is simple. Unlike Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy have large percentages of their own party who cannot stand them. When it comes to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, those who dislike them are Republicans and independents. Their party still largely circles the wagon around them. They're willing to take a bullet still. That is not true when it comes to Republican leaders. Their own voters don't like them. I don't know how you could possibly find yourself to be effective. Which brings me to a tweet yesterday from Emerald Robinson. All right. And I found it hilarious because this tells you, this is what this leads to. Okay. This is what I'm talking about. This is what it leads to. And it wasn't it the other day? It was yesterday, I believe. Let me see where it is. Emerald works for Newsmax. Okay. There it is. And it was 2 days ago. Sorry. House Republicans are meeting in Orlando to discuss their policy strategy for 21 to 22. Who is the keynote speaker? It's not Donald Trump. They didn't invite him. Who is giving them poll guidance? Frank Luntz. In other words, they plan on losing in 2022. This is what the anti-Trump forces wanted in the Republican Party. It wasn't anything to do about character. It wasn't anything to do about rhetoric, that he was crass. They didn't like his temperament. That is all smoke and mirrors. What they didn't like about Donald Trump was more personal and financial. They lost their ability to have a say in the party. They lost, or anyone who cared anyway. The media gave them the microphone anytime they wanted because that hurt Donald Trump and that hurt Trumpism. But Frank Luntz had to go to CBS News and, beg for a couple of focus groups on CBS News. That's how he made his living. Nobody was calling Frank Luntz anymore to ask him his opinion. I got a funny story. In the green room in 2016 on Fox News, Frank gets the exit polls. It shows Donald Trump got his kicked everywhere. North Carolina, maybe they're going to hold, but they lost everything. Florida, Ohio was a maybe, but it looked like they lost North Carolina too, if you were looking at just the Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. They lost everything, folks. And Florida was tipped right. That was like Hillary +4 in the exit polls. They were done. It was a rout. He hops on the phone with who first? Paul Ryan. And while they're waiting to bring him on in Fox, he's on the phone with Paul Ryan going, "Oh, sir, don't worry. Don't worry. I'm going to help you rebuild this party. Sir, don't worry. We're going to build it from the ground up. We can't take this defeat to heart. It was Donald Trump's fault. It was Donald Trump's defeat. Don't worry. I'm going to be there with you every step of the way." But that didn't happen. Donald Trump won. He drug a bunch of losers over the finish line with him. And Paul Ryan was forced, with his tiny you-know-what, to the microphone. He heard a voice nobody else heard. And now we hear him too. Think about how embarrassing that is. And where does this leave Frank Luntz? Well, nowhere. Because nobody cares about his opinion anymore. In case I wasn't clear, Hillary Clinton is going to be the next U.S. president. Frank Luntz on Twitter on election night, the minute he was handed those exit polls.
Remember the full-on
Donald,
panic once they realized?
They were flipping out. Hillary Clinton is going to win the state of Florida. Think about how stupid you look. And then where are you relegated? To the end of an article about me. Can you please comment about why he's better than you?
And why you're always wrong.
Why has he been right for 3 cycles in a row and you have been wrong? Can you please offer some comment on what he's telling us the reasons for your suckage are? It hurts. It must hurt. So now he's dying to get back in with his friends. And because Kevin is his friend. That is Paul Ryan's guy. They're dying to get back in. They're dying to get back in. Yeah, remember the emails?
Yeah, those emails.
Hat tip Cerno. Wasn't that Cerno?
Yeah, I think so.
And that was Cerno. And again, helping Hunter, trying to spin the Hunter story. They're all friends. They're all buddies. So they're dying. This is what they really hated about Donald Trump, is that he blew that wide open.
And he showed
it
how
was
you
a charade.
run.
Yeah, without them. It was a sure, and in fact, I would argue, Laura, that not only that the people that Donald Trump brought on were not great people.
Mm-hmm.
I was very critical of Brad Parscale. New Mexico, Laura, remember the unicorn guys? I was very critical of the people he brought on.
Yeah.
And I would say that there were too many of them. In 2016, the magic for him was his own instinct. He listened. You know, Robert's right about this. He listened to the voices that the media called quacks.
Yep.
But he knew, his instinct told him that they were totally disconnected. So what does he do? He brings back in some of the unfortunate people who do listen to it. The establishment pollster. He should have just listened to himself. Perfect example in CPAC.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they told me not to talk about transgender issues. Do you remember that, folks? Do I have that still here? I do. Give me a second.
I do.
I do.
Somebody said that
Trump of 2016 would have brought this up because his instincts would have told him where the public stood on this.
Somebody said you need to do your own different show of you mocking the Paul Ryans and how you mock Bidens.
Maybe I should. Maybe we should make them short little videos or something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Donald Trump in CPAC after 2020 says, oh, I was told not to talk about this. I'm going to leave this alone. This is Americans' views on transgendered issues. And during the CPAC speech, he backed away from it because he was told. He was given advice not to talk about it. And we asked people very plainly, we're going to read you some things about transgendered issues. Please tell us whether you support or oppose or whether you're unsure. Transgender students participating on sports teams alongside the gender they identify with, such as biological males identifying as female, joining a biological female soccer team, or vice versa. 53% oppose, 31% support, 17% unsure. And because of this, we went over this, and we went over this, that is crap. That 17% is largely filled with a bunch of liars who are afraid to tell you. They're not liars. They're afraid to tell you they oppose it. Because we profiled those people and we know who they are. Transgender students competing for sports scholarships against the gender they identify with, such as biological males identifying as female, competing against biological females for a track and field scholarship, or vice versa. 55% oppose, 27.8% support, another 17.2% of a bunch of people who are pinned down by social desirability bias. And again, I'm not making an educated guess on this. When we cross the unshores with those who tell us they're uncomfortable, they mirror the majority. They're just afraid. There is not going to be any statistical anomaly that shifts that opinion drastically in the other direction. These are just simply people who are unafraid. That is where we get the majority from. And then the big chunk of unsure are the rest, the vast majority of them anyway. I would say about 3 and 4. Now, we have 4 different questions here, but if you had to twist my arm and I had to average it, I would say about 3 and 4. It would break 3-1. Transgender athletes competing professionally against the gender they identify with, such as biological males identifying as female, entering a bodybuilding tournament against biological females, or vice versa, which was important. We said vice versa. What about biological females? That's why I said vice versa. That's why we put vice versa. What about biological females who identify as male now? Do you support them, joining competing in a male bodybuilder tournament? 55.7% no, 27.2% yes, 17.1% again in a 3-1 unsure that would favor oppose. Transgender fighters, or did I say 3-1? I meant a little over 2-1, not quite 3-1, a little over 2-1. Sorry, excuse me for that. Let me correct that. Transgender fighters competing against the gender they identify with, such as biological males identifying as female, entering a boxing or mixed martial arts circuit against biological females, or vice versa. 56% opposed, 25.9% support, 18.1%. You might notice it went a little bit higher, are unsure. And I would say that, the Donald Trump of 2016 would have known that. The average American thinks this is crazy. I'm going to let the media get hysterical over it, draw attention to the issue so they can do my bidding for me, which is what he did to them constantly. He would bring up these widely controversial issues where the political class and the media class were very disconnected from the average American. And he would make them have a canary over it. This way, the average American would say, yeah, that Trump is something, man. He's nuts, right? But speaking of which, why the hell are we letting these people in here who aren't vetted? It's pretty stupid.
Just saying. I mean,
illegal immigration does take away from citizens' jobs. It does drive down wages, so maybe what he's saying is crazy, but I hate to say it. That crazy is true. Right. It's common sense. And the Donald Trump of 2016 would not have shied away from that.
Do you know who hates illegal immigration? Legal immigrants.
That's right.
They hate them.
They are always
far more.
They are always way more of not way more, but they are always one of the leading groups. When you ask about amnesties, when you ask about allowing people to stay in between points of entry. I mean, we ask, by the way, on the question this last time, do you think we should be allowing waves of illegal immigrants during a pandemic to come across the border? They were right up there with whites. And
it was like
Hispanic Latinos exceeded whites by a little bit, right? Yeah. Because you had Metro whites drag it down a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is what happened in the 4 years, though, is my point. There was a loss of the Frank Luntzes of the world began to have too much say in what Donald Trump said and did. Mm-hmm. And I was always a critic of him on Twitter with how he handled it. Like, I was like, you don't have to pick that fight, but there were some things that he wasted capital on that he just didn't need to waste capital on. But I did not mean that he should revert back to every other candidate. Like Scott Walker was a fantastic, successful governor in Wisconsin, and he let George Will's wife destroy his campaign.
Gotta love it.
So I didn't mean revert to like the norm of campaigning. I just meant be a little bit wiser about picking and choosing your battles and the words. Mm-hmm. And then at this time, when you're president now, it was different when he was a candidate. But now that you're the president, some things are beneath you. You just don't have to weigh in. You allow surrogates to get into it. You spend all of your time using your big microphone to highlight the issues where the political class is totally disconnected from the rest of America. And that was something that didn't happen. So now, that is what these people hated about Donald Trump. That is what they hated. He rendered them ineffective, essentially useless. He deeply hurt their pocket. And they couldn't wait to get back to normal. Mm-hmm. And that's why Kevin McCarthy has so much of his own party who can't stand him. That's why Mitch Mcconnell has so much of his own party who can't stand him. They spent 4 years attacking the one man who stood between their supporters and their enemy. And it is a proper use of the word enemy. Wanting to engage in prosecutorial misconduct against somebody who doesn't share your political view is someone like that is your enemy. They're not a political opponent anymore. They're trying to destroy your life.
And
that is an enemy. That's totally different than a traditional political opponent who just thinks their viewpoint is better than yours and their direction for the country is better than yours. We're not talking about that anymore.
No, it's never been that, though.
That's what Trump really showed. Honestly, that's what Trump really showed. That it's more than disagree with you. Yes. It's that I don't like you. I think you're a bad person. I think you need to be eradicated from society, and your views need to be eradicated from society. And also that you don't have the right to you don't have rights that the rest of us should have. The right to free speech, the right to defend yourself, the right to due process. All of that goes out the window now if they disagree with you politically. That's very different. So that is always a proper use of the term enemy. Go ahead, though.
But that's when you need to stop and ask yourself a very important question. Why?
Yeah.
Why are these people doing this to a person who is advocating for
Well, the truth was they always did that. Their attacks on him were never just attacks on him. They were doing it to him as a message to other people like him, because the system was built for Donald Trump. It was built for Donald Trump to give somebody like a Donald Trump every advantage at the expense of others. And he betrayed that system for others. And it was to prove a point. But the attacks that they leveled against him and what he believed in, his agenda, those weren't against him.
No.
That was against you or your support, the supporters. How dare you elect somebody that we did not give the stamp of approval to? You know, if somebody like Frank Lund should show you anything, or his emails should show you anything, it's that there really is no difference between Paul Ryan and Joe Biden and the rest of them. There never was a difference. As much as Barack Obama talked trash about George W. Bush, there's not that much of a difference. There's not that much of a difference between the Clintons and the Bushes.
No.
There's
They're
not.
friends.
They're buddies. They're all buddies. They don't believe that one poses a danger to your livelihood because they don't share your livelihood. They don't share your belief system.
They all know better than you.
One just fakes one thing. The truth is, one fakes one thing better than the other. And I would argue, actually, though, that Democrats have more true believers.
Oh, yeah.
And Republicans are frauds.
About it.
Republicans are frauds.
I respect somebody who is
Excuse me,
honest.
I have to Marco Rubio now.
It's all right. I respect those that are more honest about themselves. So, to me, I would respect a hooker saying, hey, she's a hooker.
This is what I do.
Than a woman who puts on the mask of a housewife and
still
tries
does it anyway.
to pretend that she's not a hooker.
Or I would respect a hooker who admits she's a hooker, other than a woman who claims to be a professional but uses hooker tactics to rise to the top anyway. All right. I'm just saying, I would look, at least you're open about what you are. All right.
Just saying.
That's it. Excuse me, but that's me.
I'm
old school like that. I'd rather you be up front, hey, this is what I got. This is what I can do.
Ultimately, the problem is what it boils down to is Trump showed you that it is possible to run a country, and the rest want to blame each other for why you can't.
Yeah, like some of these things can be fixed. Yes. Right. And they're can kickers. Mm-hmm. They're just can kickers. They're never going to fix anything. They're never going to address anything. He made them look so bad. Why can't we get VA reform? If you're a veteran, you know what I'm talking about. And by the way, under Biden, it didn't take them long to go right back to the traditional mentality at these facilities, did it? Right? But why can't these people who are atrocious at their jobs, if the veterans really are first, why can't there be some level of accountability? Why can't they be fired? Right? Why does it always have to be we offer the head up of the current Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, but nobody below them? They're the ones who are causing the problem. Can be harmed. None of them can have their jobs taken away. All we did was, like I said, we offered up a sacrifice, which was the current VA secretary, and nothing ever changed. And for years and years and years, politicians on both sides, I'm going to reform the VA. I'm going to make it better. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to get veterans who are on waiting lines to private health care. And it never happened. Along comes Donald Trump. It happens. Federal police, not police reform, but criminal justice reform.
Yes.
Another one. I'm going to get, we're going to be more lenient. We're going to give you second chances. Never happen. Republicans and Democrats are meeting today on Capitol Hill about bipartisan criminal justice reform. Never happened. Never happened. America can't be the world's police department. We have to pull back and pay attention to ourselves more at home. Never happened. For crying out loud, George W. Bush, ran as a nationalist before 9/11. And the Paul Wolfowitzes and the Bill Kristols and the rest of them, they used 9/11 to get their hooks in him. And his entire worldview changed to the point where his own daddy had to have his former Secretary of State leak to the New York Times before the invasion of Iraq about what a disaster this was going to be and what a bad decision it was. Even Poppy Bush didn't let neocons get their hooks in them like that. And by the way, hilariously, that we now have this loser, granted a 2-term loser, but a man who single-handedly destroyed the Republican Party almost to the point of extinction, destroyed the economy because he wasn't strong enough to fight Chris Dodd and Barney Frank. He sent Hank Paulson to the Hill twice over the Community Reinvestment Act and subprime mortgages. Twice. And they blew smoke up his butt. He returned to the president and Bush just dropped it. They were fully aware of the potential disaster before Lehman even went belly up. He was too busy trying to liberate Iraq to spend political capital on that. All right? He single-handedly destroyed the economy, damn near. He destroyed a national party. By the way, he was only a 2-termer because he won Iowa by 11,000 votes. Barely a 2-termer. Barely. The party lost Iowa for two consecutive presidential election cycles by 12 and 6 points, respectively, after being someone who carried it. And it takes another guy to come around, revamp the entire party. Forget about sticking to the RNC's electoral map. He shifted the electoral map. He just reshaped it, rebuilt the party, got the most votes of any president in history, let alone a Republican president. And somehow we're supposed to listen to the loser because he's got a new book deal. We're supposed to listen to the loser who destroyed the party instead of the one who rebuilt his disaster. It's incredible. And by the way, if it wasn't for the derelict governance of the generations of Republicans that came before him, they never would have been able to pull off what they pulled off in November. Never. I mean, it's the lack of introspection on behalf of these people. How dare George W. Bush? George, where are the WMDs, George? Shouldn't you, instead of bashing Donald Trump, shouldn't you be wading through some desert in Iraq right now, looking under every grain of sand and every stone to try to find something you told everybody existed? The nerve of this freaking guy, man.
Amen.
My former commander-in-chief, by the way. The nerve of this guy. If I lied to the world about WMDs, I don't even think I'd have the courage to show my face again in public.
You would be in jail singing "Nobody Knows But Jesus" for
the left putting him on a pedestal right now. Everybody can't wait to get an interview with Bush to print on Sunday. This is somebody that Slate and the rest, and Mother Jones and the rest of them, wanted to try for war crimes at The Hague. But that's the same thing with Bob Mueller, by the way. He became their hero, and Bob Mueller was quite literally a tyrant who was using the tragedy of 9/11 to take away your Fourth Amendment rights, which he did. The left was right about that. The left was absolutely right about what George W. Bush did under the pretext of national security. Absolutely right. You were never getting back that freedom. That's what they said. You let him take it, you're never getting that freedom back.
Yep.
That's what happened. So we got some crappy reform of the Patriot Act? Please.
You and I.
And we wouldn't have only got that because of Edward Snowden.
Yelling during that Patriot Act.
Yep. And by the way, the only reason why we got that is because of Edward Snowden, who George W. Bush, Liz Cheney, and the rest would tell you is a traitor who should hang And I don't like how he went about it either. But it doesn't take away from what he did. We would not have known about the bulk metadata collection of PRISM and any of that if it wasn't for Edward Snowden, who Donald Trump refused to pardon on the way out, along with Julian Assange, who will die in prison.
That's something I kind of...
Who will die in prison, even though he is single-handedly responsible for showing the world what conservatives have said all along, that there is no such thing between the Democratic Party and the media. They are, in fact, one in the same. If you're wondering where that fact check came about on Tim Scott by the fraud fact checker Glenn Kessler at the Washington Post, just go to the database. Type in Kessler in the WikiLeaks database. Type in Greg Sargent in the WikiLeaks database. And you will see very clearly the DNC funnels these losers' stories. Mm-hmm. They print what the DNC wants them to print.
I mean, you didn't hear about Trump trying to find that composer in 2019. Donald Trump tried to find...
the plane you're talking about? Glenn Miller? Glenn Miller. None of that. None of that came to light. He was in fact, apparently he had more awards than even Presley. What's it called? Elvis Presley, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, in a 4-year period. His name was Glenn Miller, wasn't he? Yeah, anyway, he decided to volunteer in 1944, before that, he decided to volunteer for the military in World War II. He joined the Army Air Force, and basically what he did was go around and perform to cheer up the troops. And it was December 15th, 1944. His plane left France to head across in the English Channel. It was bad weather. He left with a colonel and a pilot, and they all had their reasons for taking the risk. He wanted to get there to perform for the troops. He wanted to get set up before Christmas. He didn't want to miss the holiday, and he wanted to give them some Christmas cheer. And the colonel, he had some depot he needed to set up, and the pilot wanted to be a fighter pilot, actually. So he was trying to prove his skills in order to get combat ready. He wanted to actually fly into bullets. So all of them had their reasons, and they were noble reasons. But it was a risk, a tragic mistake, and his plane disappeared over the English Channel. Yeah, and you didn't hear about any of this, but apparently the State Department was involved in everything. There were some rumors that they potentially knew the location of the plane, and you would have heard, if it was Joe Biden or Donald Trump or any of this, Joe Biden or Barack Obama, you would have heard about how they tried to find this great hero, this great musical icon of his day, and this hero who joined the military, even though he had the most lucrative, successful musician career ever until then. And you just didn't hear stories like that. Instead, we all know what we heard. Incessantly, endlessly, over and over and over and over. All right, so with that, it is 1:03. All right, keep posted. I'll let you know when we're going to have Matt on. I did just get an email from his number 2 asking when we could do it. We're going to do that. That'll be fun. And then also, of course, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. When we do the surveys, you can have input onto what we put into the survey. And I'm trying to migrate as much of our Twitter force over there as we can. A lot of cool things coming on Locals. Eventually, I'll always stream to YouTube, but eventually they're going to have their live stream. There will be things we only do on Locals. That's number 1. I'm dying for them to get this out, roll this out. That's number 1. But then also number 2, that's where we'll interact more. It's just where we're going to interact. Mm-hmm. Cannot rely on YouTube to let me talk about plot bans on line charts with vaccines and mask mandates. Okay. It's just not, it's not feasible in this world anymore. Unfortunately, it's just not feasible in this world. All right. All right. So with that in mind, of course, don't forget to like the page, People's Pundit Daily on Facebook, so you can know when we're going to go live. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube while we're there, and hit that like button if you like it, like the video. Hit the dislike button if you dislike the video. That's what America's all about. All right. Hit the notification bell. Hit the notification bell on YouTube. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. We've been trying to post today. We were a little late, but we've been trying to post it a little bit early so you get that notification. We are all experiencing what you are experiencing. All right. So with that, looks like Facebook got their issue fixed from yesterday or Monday, which was they're cutting off the streams. That's cool. And of course, you can still follow me on Twitter at peoples_pundit. All right. I'm on Parler at peoplespundit. Although I just started to interact a little bit more there again. I'm not sure about it yet. And you can find me on Gitmo Life, gitmo.life at peoplespundit. Same thing. All right. We're going to kick rocks. We'll be back Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be freewheeling Friday. We'll have Don on. Maybe we'll have Matt on Friday. I don't know. Keep your eye on my Twitter feed and we'll let you know. All right.
He's like, I don't know. A
lot of stuff. And we'll talk more on Friday about whether or not we're going to do just a Biden approval poll. Because as an update here to the public polling project, you know what? I'm not going to look at that browser. I'm going to look at this one. As an update to it, we remember we overfunded the last project about $2,000. So what's in there now is $2,000 shy of where we're really at. Okay. I have not figured out a way how to show that. So we're really at 2,575 out of the 6 goal. If things are moving slow, I wanted a 100-day poll. And I really, because I know what's going to happen with gun rights and everything. There's so much I wanted to get in the poll, but you know, it is what it is. So if we don't make that mark, then maybe we'll do a little smaller poll just of Biden's approval, so we can have a little track, maybe every 2 weeks to 4 weeks. 4 weeks is it's a lot of money. Every 4 weeks at least, maybe monthly, if we could do it monthly. We were thinking seasonally, but this is also very unconventional what we're seeing going on. So somebody's got to have some input on where the public stands on this stuff. All right. Oh, and Friday, we're going to talk about the economic sentiment. We didn't go over it. I'm going to show you exactly how we calculate it. All right. Very much like the Consumer Confidence Index, only this is the first ever one that's a registered voter index. And why does that matter? Because who the hell cares when it comes to predicting elections and how people feel about the economy? Who the hell cares about all adults? Registered voter, basically it's a Consumer Confidence Index of registered voters. So it's like the Registered Voter Economic Confidence Index. I don't know what the hell I'm going to call it yet, but it's really cool. And I'm going to show you how we did it. We asked people to give us a positive or negative, poor or bad, just that same way. And then it's a little division, a little average. We'll show you it's cool.
A little bit of this,
a little bit of this, a little bit of that. All right. And we have our first ever reading. And from there, hopefully many more to come. All right. So I'm out of here. We're going to kick rocks. 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Inside the numbers. Don't miss What Are the Odds on Monday at 2 p.m. But we'll talk more about that. Eric show. When's Eric? Thursday?
Thursday,
tonight?
5:30.
Thursday, 5:30. Watch Unstructured with Eric Hunley.
He's had some great old cases and has all the whatchamacallits. What are they called?
Oh, behavioral experts.
Yeah, like the experts. That's the word. Wow.
It's gonna be a hodgepodge.
Look into it. So
cool.
It's cool. Hopefully they can find the answer to these cases that have been long lost.
Ooh, do.
Yeah, baby.
All right, we're out. See you on Friday, folks. See you on Friday.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker.